Hi, I'm Greg Scott, author of Bullseye Breach, an IT security educational book disguised as a thriller about how Russian criminals invade the IT network of fictional retailer Bullseye Stores to steal 40 million credit card numbers right under the noses of people who should have been more alert. DNS poisoning is a particularly nasty attack because if it's done right, you won't know you've been hit until after you've been fooled into giving away all your passwords so your attacker can drain all your financial accounts and steal your identity. This mini seminar will show you how this works and what you can do about it. I'm going to give you some tech details in this seminar that you might not have ever considered. I'm giving you this stuff because you need to know how attackers think. The best attackers analyze the system they want to attack. They probe for weaknesses and then apply creativity and then they launch the attack. And trust me, there's some pretty creative attacks in today's internet. This is one of them, and it can be devastating. So don't be like these guys. Be smart. How does your computer or cell phone know how to find all the websites and other services you access over the internet? It uses a system called DNS, or Domain Naming Service, to translate names into IP addresses. Think of DNS as kind of like a phone book on the internet. For this to make sense, you need to know what an IP address is. Think of an IP address as kind of like a phone number, but on the internet. We write IPv4 addresses as 4 numbers separated by dots, just like you can see in the slide. Each number ranges from 0 to 255. That comes out to 32 bits, or an address space wide enough to handle a little more than 4 billion objects. You've probably seen references to IPv4 and IPv6. We mostly use IPv4 today. Don't worry about IPv6 for now. IPv6 addressing is different, but the concepts for our purposes here are the same. Here's one difference between IP addresses and phone numbers. Your cell phone has the same phone number no matter where you connect into the cell network, but your computer will acquire a different IP address depending on where you connect it into the internet. I'll show you how that works in a minute. And what about servers? Most servers are in the same place all the time and they have static IP addresses. We usually refer to servers by name, not by IP address. You can see in my example, I want to talk to www.google.com. I don't care what its IP address is, I only want to know its name. To translate all those names into IP addresses, computers need to know the IP address of a special server called a DNS resolver. So when I want to find www.google.com, just like the old days when we used to look up names in the phone book, I ask my assigned DNS resolver to translate for me. Now let's back up a step. How does a computer find its DNS resolver? Enter DHCP, or Dynamic Host Control Protocol. When I connect a computer into a network, it sends a broadcast asking anyone listening to tell it what it needs to know. Hopefully a DHCP server replies and gives it what it needs to find itself. Here's how this plays out. We start when a computer sends a broadcast looking for a DHCP server. It's kind of like standing in a crowded room blindfolded and yelling, "Hey, where am I?" Now remember that today's smartphones are really just small computers with a voice app, so they behave the same way. The DHCP server responds by sending an IP address and other information to the computer that asked for it. The DHCP server also sends the IP address of the gateway router. That's how your computer finds the internet. And it tells your computer how to find its DNS resolver. I put those dotted lines in the slide because the DNS resolver might be another server inside your local network, or it might be a public one out on the internet somewhere, or it might be a software module running inside your gateway router. Every network is different. In most home networks, both the DHCP server and DNS resolver are software modules inside the home gateway router. Keep this in mind when I tell you about how bad guys attack it. I need to emphasize something here. When you translate names to IP addresses, you trust that your DNS resolver will get it right. What happens if your DNS resolver gets it wrong? The short answer is nothing good. If that name translates to the wrong IP address, you might visit a website pretending to be your banking website that steals your passwords and your identity. That's why DNS resolvers are such juicy targets for attackers. If I'm an attacker and I own your DNS resolver, then I own you. That's the attack vector. Poison your DNS resolution. There's a few ways to do it. Let's introduce a few players to complete the picture. Alice is you, the consumer. You want to reach out over the internet to Bob's banking website, and every drama always needs a bad guy. This time we'll call him Ivan the Invader. I was thinking about adding some evil music sound effects right here, but I decided that's over the top. So here's the complete picture with all the players in their spots. Note Ivan's DNS resolver and Ivan's evil website designed to impersonate Bob's banking website. Here's Ivan's first attack method. Poison Alice's computer to use Ivan's DNS resolver instead of the one she should be using. This is easy to do. Just send Alice a phishing email. That's phishing with a PH, and trick Alice into opening the wrong email attachment. See my email seminar on phishing scams for how that works. Alice opens the email attachment and unknowingly runs Ivan's email program, and now Ivan owns Alice. Cue the evil laughter here. From Ivan's point of view, the problem with this attack method is there's not much gain for all the trouble. Yeah, he's compromised Alice, but with some creativity, Ivan can do better. Since Ivan already knows how to attack Alice's computer, why not use her computer as a beachhead into the entire network? Maybe Ivan can figure out a way to tell Alice's computer to poison the DHCP server. Remember, that DHCP server tells everyone on Alice's side of the internet how to find a DNS resolver. If Ivan can make that DHCP server tell everyone to use his evil DNS resolver instead of the correct one, then Ivan owns more than just Alice. Now he owns everybody on Alice's side of the internet. Up the volume on that evil laughter this time. What's the easiest way for Ivan to convince Alice's computer to attack her own DHCP server? Well, go after home networks. Remember that the DHCP server and DNS resolver in most home networks are really just software modules inside those gateway routers. And if Alice is a typical home user, she probably left her gateway router with its default password. You can just picture Ivan smiling and rubbing his hands together at the possibilities. Ivan wants to get inside that router, and Alice is his ticket in. All those routers have little built-in websites for management. Alice at home probably doesn't know how to do this, but if she wants to change settings in that router, she would launch her web browser, navigate to her router IP address, log in, and make her changes. What if Ivan had a script to mimic Alice's activity in her web browser? Well, there's a language called JavaScript, and that's what it does. If Ivan could trick Alice into downloading and executing a copy of that script on her computer or cell phone, Ivan's script could silently poison the settings inside Alice's internet gateway router, and nobody would know the difference. Now take one more step. Why poison DHCP at all? All those home network gateway routers also have a software DNS module inside. Here's one huge difference between DNS resolvers and phone books. While phone books had names and phone numbers for everyone in town right there in the book, most DNS resolvers are only authoritative for a few names, and they recursively ask other public DNS resolvers for the rest. Alice asked her resolver to translate a name, and her resolver asked an upstream resolver. Just like Alice's computer has the address of her DNS resolver, Alice's DNS resolver also has the address of an upstream DNS resolver. You see where this is going. Make Alice's DNS resolver use Ivan's evil upstream resolver instead of the one it's supposed to use, and now there's no evidence of an attack anywhere inside Alice's network. It's an innocent-looking setting buried deep inside Alice's gateway router, and she has no clue how to even look that up. Give Ivan credit for cleverness. And now the icing on the cake. Convince Alice to download a cool new ringtone onto her cell phone and bury that script that poisons the setting on her internet gateway inside that download. Unless Alice educates herself, she'll never know what hit her. Turn Alice's cell phone into an Internet Typhoid Mary. It poisons every home network it touches. This is not hypothetical. There's a documented attack in the wild right now against Android phones, and you can see on the slide the reference to the article. Let's not get into an Android versus Apple war here. There are plenty of iOS attacks too, and I'd be surprised if a variant of this one is not also going after Apple phones. See how attackers think? Recon first, then try an idea, then improve it, and then improve it some more, and pretty soon we're up against a formidable enemy. So how do you defend against this? Number one, be careful about what apps you install. If you meet a stranger on the street and he asks you to share names and phone numbers for everybody you know, you probably wouldn't do it, right? Well, let's say that same stranger writes a software program for you to download. Why would you share that information with a piece of software you don't know? So only install software from a trusted app store, and even then be suspicious. Get rid of default passwords in all your devices. You've heard this advice before, and now you see why it's important. So pause this presentation. Right now, pause this. Go change all your default passwords, and then come back. Now this is one you might not have heard. Document all those router settings in your home or business network. That way, if somebody like Ivan finds a way in and changes a bunch of settings, you have a baseline to compare against. Especially make sure you know what your DNS resolver should use for its upstream DNS resolver. Don't shrink from this fight, because nobody else will fight it for you. If you need more ammunition, see my mini tutorial about phishing scams and some of my other mini tutorials. Phishing is the #1 way invaders like Ivan gain entry to rob you blind. I need to leave you with one final warning. Buy your copy of Bullseye Breach today, but don't start reading until a Friday afternoon, because once you start, you won't be able to put it down, and this gives you the whole weekend to recover from jet lag after you're up all night Friday night reading. And if you like what you read, please leave a nice review on Amazon and all the other online review sites. Authors use these reviews to build credibility so we can keep writing. And thanks for putting up with my amateur narration.